Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are standing at the foot of what is, well, effectively the Mount Everest of aviation theory.
That's a good way to put it.
We are looking at the airline transport pilot license examinations, better known as the ATPLs.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're listening to this, chances are you're either about to start climbing or maybe you're already halfway up the cliff face wondering, why you did this to yourself.
It is a massive topic. And Everest isn't just a dramatic opening line. It's actually a very accurate analogy for the sheer endurance required.
Right.
I think for anyone outside of the industry, it's honestly hard to grasp just how big this hurdle is.
It really feels like it. I've been digging through this massive stack of notes, regulation documents, forum discussions from exhausted students, and expert guides. And frankly, it is intimidating just looking at the pile on the desk.
Yeah, it's a lot.
We are talking about 13, sometimes 14 distinct subjects, thousands of pages of text, and a testing system that seems designed, quite literally, to see if you have the mental discipline to command a commercial airliner.
That's the key word right there. Discipline. The whole system is designed to filter people out. I mean, you don't just sprint up Everest.
Yeah.
You have to plan your route, you have to acclimatize, and if you rush it, you crash. The regulators are essentially saying, look, if you can't manage your time and stress during these exams, how can we trust you with 300 passengers at 38,000 feet?
One of our key sources, a pilot named Rory, who runs a site called Rory on Air, he described this explicitly as a marathon, not a sprint. He said it's a test of character as much as it is a test of intelligence. So our mission today is to transform this mountain of, frankly, scary source material into a structured battle plan.
A roadmap.
Exactly. Whether you are a student pilot just signing up or maybe you're in the thick of it and feeling overwhelmed, we are going to break down how to actually pass these things.
And not just pass, but pass well. Because there is a huge difference between scraping a pass and actually knowing your stuff when you get into the cockpit of a Boeing or an Airbus.
That's a great point. It's about retention, not just getting the certificate.
It has to be.
So let's set the stakes here. We aren't just talking about a pop quiz. These are the exams that get you the frozen ATPL. I think we need to clarify that term right off the bat because it sounds a bit like a cryogenic experiment.
It does sound a bit sci-fi, doesn't it? It stands for Frozen Airline Transport Pilot License.
Okay.
Essentially, when you finish your commercial training and you pass all these theory exams, you have the theoretical credits frozen in your file.
So they're just sitting there.
They sit there waiting until you have enough flying experience, usually 1,500 hours total time, to unfreeze them and become a full captain. But getting those credits is, it's generally considered the most significant intellectual milestone in a pilot's career. It's the gatekeeper.
The big filter. Yeah. So before we get into the nitty-gritty of aerodynamics and meteorology, we have to understand the rules of the game.
Absolutely.
Because looking at the regulations, it seems like the bureaucracy is almost as hard as the physics. The authorities have built a very specific architectural maze you have to navigate.
The regulatory architecture is incredibly rigid. And it is designed to filter out people who rely on luck. You cannot just drift through this process. You have to be strategic from day one.
Okay, so let's unpack the clock. I keep seeing references to the 18-month rule. It sounds ominous. What exactly triggers this countdown?
It is the primary constraint. So the moment you set your very first exam, let's say you take air law and meteorology in January, the clock starts ticking at the end of that month.
Okay, at the end of the month, not the day of the exam.
Correct. And you then have exactly 18 months to pass all 13 or 14 subjects.
And if you don't, if you hit 18 months in one day and you have, say, one subject left,
then everything you have achieved up to that point expires.
Wait, everything? Even the passes you got 99% on?
Everything. All the passes vanish. You have to go back to ground school, redo the mandatory training hours, and sit every single exam again from scratch. It is a total reset.
That is absolutely brutal. Talk about a high-pressure deadline. I can just imagine the anxiety that creates as you get closer to that year-and-a-half mark.
It creates immense anxiety, and that's why the strategy we're going to talk about today is so important. You need a timeline. You can't just take a month off here and there because you don't feel like studying.
The clock keeps ticking.
The clock doesn't stop for illness. It doesn't stop for motivation slumps. You have to keep moving forward.
And then there's this concept of sittings. It's not like university where you just take an exam whenever you feel like it or whenever the professor schedules it. You have to manage your own sessions, right?
Correct. You are limited to a maximum of 6 sittings.
6. for 13 exams.
Precisely. And a sitting is defined very strictly as a period of 10 working days. So you book a block of exams with the authority. Let's say you book 3 exams for a Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. That whole block counts as one sitting.
So if I fail one of those exams on Tuesday, I can't just pop back in the next week and try again without a penalty.
You can, but that would count as your second sitting, and you only have 6.
Wow.
If you use a whole sitting just to retake one failed exam, you are burning a lifeline. You have effectively wasted, 16% of your opportunity on a single retake.
So the math forces you to cluster them. You can't just do them one by one, or you'd run out of sittings before you ran out of exams.
Exactly. If there are 13 subjects and 6 sittings, you have to average more than 2 exams per sitting just to finish them all. Most students, the smart ones, they try to do them in 3 or 4 sittings to leave a safety buffer.
A buffer for retakes.
A buffer in case they need to retake something, yeah.
Then there's the 4 attempts rule. This one sounds like a video game where you run out of lives and have to restart the level.
It's actually worse than restarting the level. It's restarting the whole game.
Oh no.
You have 4 attempts to pass any single subject. If you fail, say, general navigation 4 times, you don't just fail general navigation. You fail the entire ATPL course.
Just to be crystal clear on this, even if I have passed the other 12 subjects with 100%, if I fail that one subject on the 4th attempt, the entire set is just voided.
Voided. Gone. You are back to square one. Ground school starts again. You have to pay the fees again, sit the classes again, all of it.
I can only imagine the psychological pressure on that 4th attempt. If you're sitting there, you failed it 3 times. And you know this is it. The whole thing is on the line.
We call it exponential pressure. The closer you get to the end of the process, the higher the stakes become. If you are on your last exam and you failed it 3 times, your entire career investment, tens of thousands of dollars, years of your time, is hanging on that 1 hour in the exam hall.
Unbelievable.
I've seen students physically shaking in that situation.
And the pass mark isn't exactly low either. We aren't looking for a C here, are we?
No, it's 75%. And they are strict. 74.9% is a fail. There is no rounding up. There is no extra credit for good handwriting. You either know it or you don't.
It's a binary system.
Very much so. You are either safe or you are not.
Wow. Okay, so those are the rules of the game. High stakes, strict timelines, harsh penalties. It definitely sets the tone. Now let's look at the enemies we are facing. The subjects themselves, we have 13 of them. How do we even begin to categorize this behemoth?
Well, it helps to break them down conceptually rather than just listing them alphabetically.
Okay.
If you look at the source analysis, we can group them into 3 main buckets. You have your calculation-heavy subjects, your memory-heavy ones, and then the conceptual or logical subjects.
And I guess some easier ones too.
And then, of course, there are the easier wins, though I hesitate to call any of them truly easy.
Right. Let's start with the monsters then. The hard subjects. The ones that seem to keep students up at night. I'm seeing data here that shows pass rates as low as 65% for some of these.
Yes. The big 4 in this category are usually general navigation, performance, flight planning, and principles of flight.
General navigation, or Gen Nav, seems to have a reputation as the hardest of them all.
Yeah.
Why is that? Is it just the math?
It's the application of the math. It's more than just crunching numbers. Gen Nav is about understanding where you are on the Earth, but doing it with heavy geometry and spatial visualization.
What do you mean by that?
You are dealing with the difference between great circles, which is the shortest path across a sphere, and rhumb lines, which are lines of constant bearing. You have to calculate how these lines converge at the poles. It requires you to visualize a 3D sphere on a 2D piece of paper.
So it's very abstract.
Very. And you have to use a specific tool, right? I see it mentioned everywhere, the CRP5.
The famous whiz wheel.
Yes.
It's a mechanical flight computer. It looks like a circular slide rule from the 1950s.
In an age of iPads and GPS, you are sitting there in the exam twisting plastic discs.
You are. You're calculating wind drift, true airspeed, density, altitude. The problem is that it is an analog instrument. It requires precision.
Right.
If you align the marks slightly wrong, your answer will be off by 2 degrees. And in the exam, that 2-degree error might lead you to the wrong multiple choice answer. It tests your ability to be precise with archaic tools.
That must be so frustrating.
It is, because you know a computer could do it in a millisecond, but you have to prove you understand the underlying principle.
Okay, then we have performance. This is about takeoff and landing, right? Then am I oversimplifying?
It is, but it's at an airliner level. You aren't just asking, can I take off? You are looking at complex graphs for jet transports, often referred to as Class A performance.
Okay.
You have to factor in wet runways, the slope of the runway, wind components, and required climb gradients. The challenge here is usually the factoring.
Factoring. What's that? Regulatory safety margins. For example, if you calculate you can land in 1,000 meters, the regulations might say, okay, but for a wet runway, you must assume it takes longer. So multiply that distance by 1.92.
Wow.
If you forget that one step, you get the wrong answer. And the examiners, being slightly sadistic, will absolutely put the unfactored answer in the multiple choice options just to trap you.
That is mean. It's testing your attention to detail as much as the math itself.
It's rigorous. They want to know you won't run a jet off the end of a runway because you forgot it was raining.
Fair enough. Then there's flight planning. One source mentioned this has the lowest historical pass rate in some datasets, around 65%. That's low.
Flight planning is brutal because of what we call the cumulative error problem.
Okay.
You are often planning a theoretical flight from point A to point B. You have to calculate fuel burn for the climb, the cruise, the descent. If you make a tiny error in the first 10 minutes of the calculation, say, getting the wind component slightly wrong during the climb, that error carries through every single subsequent step.
So a small mistake at the start becomes a huge mistake at the end.
By the time you get to the final fuel figure, you are miles off the correct answer. So precision is everything. You can't just ballpark the first step.
You really have to be meticulous.
Absolutely not. And then rounding comes into play. If you round your numbers too early in the calculation, you drift away from the correct answer. You have to carry the decimal places right to the very end. It demands a level of bookkeeping that drives people crazy.
The last of the hard group is Principles of Flight, or PF. This just sounds like physics class.
It is aerodynamics, lift, drag, thrust, stability. The challenge here is that it is highly conceptual. You can't just memorize a fact. You have to understand relationships.
Like cause and effect.
Exactly. If I increase the angle of attack, what happens to the center of pressure? What happens to the boundary layer? If you don't understand the underlying physics, you cannot guess these answers.
And it goes beyond simple planes, right? I saw mentions of supersonic flight.
Yes, it covers transonic and supersonic flight. Things get weird near the speed of sound. Air stops behaving like a fluid and starts compressing. You get shock waves. The controls might even reverse their effectiveness.
Wow.
It is completely counterintuitive if you've only ever flown small propeller planes. You have to learn a whole new set of physics rules.
Okay, so those are the subjects where you need your brain turned on to maximum voltage. Then we have the memory subjects. Air law seems to be the big one here.
Air law is almost a pure test of rote memory. It covers the Chicago Convention, the ICAO annexes, the rules of the air.
The sources mention that the volume of arbitrary data is the real struggle.
Yes. I mean, you need to know the specific light configurations for a dredging vessel at night versus a minesweeping vessel.
Seriously?
Seriously. You need to know the exact legal definitions of international treaties. It's dry, it's boring, and there is a lot of it. But unlike Gen Nav, you don't need to be a math genius. You just need the discipline to sit there and memorize it.
And operational procedures falls into this bucket too.
Mostly, yes. It covers things like dangerous goods, bird strike reporting, and emergency equipment requirements. It's generally considered easier, but it has a quirky habit of throwing up obscure questions that aren't in the standard manuals. You have to be ready for curveballs.
Okay, moving on to the conceptual subjects. Meteorology and aircraft general knowledge, or AGK.
Meteorology is vast. That is the best word for it. You are studying the entire global atmosphere, thermodynamics, frontal systems, climatology. You need to be able to interpret METARs and TAFs. Those are the coded weather reports. The difficulty with MET is the sheer range. One question might be a simple definition of a cumulonimbus cloud, and the very next one might be a complex analysis of how a jet stream core interacts with a frontal system over the North Atlantic.
So it requires both memory and a deep understanding of the whole system.
Exactly. You have to visualize the atmosphere in 3D.
And AGK. This is engines and systems, right?
Yes. Airframes, hydraulics, electrics, engines, both piston and turbine. The trick with AGK is understanding the system architecture. It's not enough to know this is a hydraulic pump.
You need to know what it connects to.
You need to know that if the hydraulic pump fails, it affects the flight controls, which might degrade the handling qualities. It's all about cause and effect within the machine. You are basically learning the anatomy of the aircraft.
Finally, we have the easier wins, communications and instrumentation. These sound more manageable.
Communications is usually the morale booster. Pass rates are often up at 98%. It's VFR and IFR radio procedures. If you speak English well and have done some flying, it's usually pretty straightforward.
In instrumentation.
Instrumentation involves gyroscopes and pedagogical systems. It has a high pass rate, around 90%, because the physics are contained and predictable. It's a good subject to bank an early pass on.
So looking at this whole landscape, the strategy of how you tackle them becomes absolutely critical. You can't just dive in randomly.
No, you need a plan. Most flight schools break these 13 subjects down into modules, usually 2 or 3 of them.
What's the golden rule for grouping them? Is there one?
Balance. The golden rule is balance. You want to mix the heavy calculation subjects with the lighter memory subjects. You never, ever want to put Gen Nav, performance, flight planning, and principles of flight all in the same module.
That sounds like a recipe for disaster.
It is. We call that the suicide module.
Because your brain just gets completely fried from the constant math.
Yes, you need variety. And conversely, you don't want to burn through all your quote-unquote easy subjects like comms and human performance in the very first module.
Oh, that's interesting. Why not? Get some wins on the board early, build some confidence.
It's tempting. A lot of people think that way. But if you do that, you leave yourself with a final module consisting only of the hardest subjects just when you are most tired and your motivation is at its lowest.
Right. You need some light at the end of the tunnel.
You want to save some easy wins to boost your morale in the later stages. You need to sprinkle the easy ones in with the hard ones to keep your sanity.
Can you give us an example of a good mix? A smart pairing?
A classic strategy is to pair general navigation, which is heavy math and visualization, with human performance, which is interesting psychology and physiology. They use completely different parts of the brain.
Okay, I like that.
Or you could pair performance with principles of flight, because there is some overlap in the physics, which helps reinforce the learning. Studying instruments with radio nav is another great combo because they are so interconnected.
Let's talk about the timeline. The sources suggest a 6 to 9 month window for dedicated study. Does that sound right?
That's the standard for a modular student, someone doing this perhaps alongside a job or other commitments. It assumes about 20 to 25 hours of solid study per week.
And how do you structure that day to day? Because one of the pitfalls mentioned in the Airhead article was students just winging it without a daily plan.
The marathon analogy applies here again. You shouldn't do 8-hour study binges on a Saturday and then nothing for 3 days. That leads to burnout.
Right.
The brain stops retaining information after a certain point. The recommendation from most successful students is 2 to 3 hours daily, but broken up. The Pomodoro technique, 25 minutes work, 5 minutes break, is highly recommended.
I've heard of that. It keeps you fresh.
It does. And keeping track visually seems to be a big tip from the successful candidates.
Like a spreadsheet or something.
Yes. A wall chart or a spreadsheet. You need to see your progress. Mark topics as green when you've reviewed them recently, amber if it's been a few days, and red when they are overdue for review. You have to treat it like a project management exercise. You are the project manager of your own brain.
I love that. Project manager of your own brain. Let's pivot to the actual learning process. Section 4 of our outline is about advanced study techniques. And there is a strong consensus in the sources that just reading the textbook is a trap.
Passive review is the absolute enemy. It creates what psychologists call the illusion of competence.
The illusion of competence.
Yes. You read a chapter on jet engines and you nod along thinking, yeah, I get that. The text is clear, the diagrams are pretty. But if someone asked you to close the book and draw the fuel system from memory, you couldn't do it.
Because you recognized it, but you didn't actually learn it.
Exactly. Recognition is not recall. In the exam, you need recall. You have to pull it out of thin air.
So what's the alternative? How do you force recall?
Active recall. You have to force your brain to retrieve the information without any assistance. It's painful. It feels like your brain is sweating. But that struggle is what actually builds the strong neural pathway.
One technique mentioned is blurting. I love the name. It sounds messy.
It is messy, but it is incredibly effective. You take a blank sheet of paper and write a heading, say, gas turbine engines. Then, without looking at your notes, you write down absolutely everything you know about that topic. Scribble diagrams, formulas, definitions, anything. You push until you can't remember anything else.
And then what? You check your work.
Only when you are completely empty do you open the book and check what you wrote against the real material. The things you missed are your knowledge gaps. That's what you need to focus on.
Not the stuff you already know.
Precisely. You're being efficient.
And then there's the Feynman technique. This one sounds a bit more sophisticated.
Named after the brilliant physicist Richard Feynman. The idea is to explain a complex concept like gyroscopic precession in really simple terms, as if you were teaching a 10-year-old.
Or a podcast host.
Or a podcast host. The point is, if you find yourself using jargon or stumbling or saying, well, it's just, it's complicated, it means you don't actually understand it well enough.
If you can't explain it simply, you don't know it.
You have to go back and simplify until you own the concept.
I suppose this connects to spaced repetition as well, this idea of reviewing material over time.
It does. We forget things on a predictable curve. It's called the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve. If you learn something today, you'll forget 50% of it by tomorrow. It's just how the human brain works.
So how do you fight that?
Spaced repetition combats this. You review a topic 1 day later, then 3 days later, then 7 days, then 14. The intervals get longer as the memory gets stronger.
And the sources highly recommend digital tools for this, right? Doing that manually with a calendar sounds like a paperwork nightmare.
Anki is the gold standard here. It's a digital flashcard app that handles all the scheduling for you. If you get a card wrong, it shows it to you again tomorrow. If you get it right, it pushes it out to next week. It automates the entire discipline.
Okay, now we need to talk about the elephant in the room. Or maybe the elephant in the cockpit. Question banks.
The Q banks.
Yes.
This is where the rubber meets the runway.
So for the uninitiated, there is a central database of questions called the ETQB, the European Central Question Bank. And commercial companies have essentially reconstructed this database for students to practice on.
That's right. Companies like Bristol Ground School or BGS Aviation Exam and ATPLQ have databases with thousands of questions that are very, very similar to the real exam. Sometimes they're identical.
And the consensus in all the source material is you cannot pass without them.
It is practically impossible. I'd go that far. The syllabus is too vast and the question style is too specific. You need to practice the format. You need to see how they phrase things and what they're looking for.
But there's a huge warning label attached to this. The sources call it banging the bank. What does that mean?
Banging the bank means mindlessly memorizing the answers without understanding the question. You see a question about a Boeing 737 takeoff, and you just remember, oh, the answer is 4,000 feet.
Why is that a trap? I mean, it sounds efficient if the questions are the same.
Because the examiners know people do this, so they use variable questions. They will give you the exact same question text, but change one input, like the temperature from 15 degrees to 20 degrees.
Oh, I see.
If you memorized 4,000 feet, you will select it. But because the temperature is higher, the performance is worse, and the real answer is now different. If you don't know the formula, you fail.
So banging the bank can actually lead you to select the wrong answer with a high degree of confidence.
Exactly. It's a false sense of security, and it is a massive trap.
So how should you use them effectively? What's the right way?
Use them in diagnostic mode. Take a test before you study a topic to see what you don't know. Then, after studying, filter the bank. If you are weak on altimeters, drill down and do 50 questions just on altimeters.
Then focus on the explanations.
Yes, read the explanations for every question you get wrong. The explanation is often more valuable than the question itself because it teaches you the logic.
And there's a strategy for the final weeks, isn't there? A shift in focus.
Yes. The last 2 weeks strategy, this is where you shift from textbooks to pure volume. You should be doing 400 to 500 questions a day.
500 questions a day, that sounds insane.
It is intense. But you need to build speed and pattern recognition so that on exam day, you aren't thinking about the easy questions, you are reacting to them. You want to clear the easy ones quickly so you have more time for the hard calculations.
Before we get to exam day itself, there is a new player in town, Area 100 KSA. What is this? It sounds like a secret government agency.
It stands for Knowledge, Skills, and Attitude. It was introduced fairly recently because airlines were complaining.
Complaining about what?
They said, these cadets have passed all the theory exams, but they can't make a decision, they can't work in a team, and they fall apart under pressure.
So they were passing the test but failing at being actual pilots.
Exactly. They were professional exam passers, not aviators. So KSA is designed to bridge that gap. There is no formal external exam for this at the Civil Aviation Authority. It is assessed internally by your flight school.
How do they assess it?
They do scenario-based exercises. For example, a diversion scenario. You might be flying a simulator or a desktop trainer. The weather closes in, you have a sick passenger. You have to work as a team to decide where to go.
And they're watching how you interact.
They are assessing your competency, not just your memory. Are you communicative? Are you assertive? Do you prioritize safety over schedule? That sort of thing.
And there's a mental math component, too.
Yes. And this catches a lot of people out. You have to pass a mental math test with a 75% pass mark, and, this is the crucial part, no calculators allowed.
Ouch. What kind of math are we talking about here? Not calculus, I hope.
No. It's practical pilot math. Descent planning is a big one. If you are at 30,000 feet and need to be at 2,000 feet, when do you start down?
Is there a rule of thumb for that?
A standard profile is a 3-degree slope, so you multiply your altitude to lose in thousands by 3. So 28,000 feet to lose, let's say 30 to be simple, 30 times 3 is 90. So you start your descent 90 miles out.
Okay, that's actually really useful.
But then you have fuel conversions, pounds to kilograms, crosswind components. You need to be able to do this in your head quickly, because in a real cockpit emergency, you might not have time to grab the calculator or fiddle with an app.
Okay, let's fast forward. It's exam day. You've done the study, you've used the Q bank responsibly, and you are walking into the center. What are the tactics?
First, logistics. It sounds silly, but people fail because of logistics. Arrive 30 minutes early, bring the right ID, a passport usually, and check your equipment. You are only allowed specific calculators, usually Casio FX models, and your COP5.
And a clean Jeppesen manual. Right,
Yep.
I read that's a big deal.
Yes. For the navigation and planning exams, you use a rote manual. It must be pristine. No pencil marks, no cheat notes written in the margins. They will flip through every single page. If they find notes, you could be disqualified for cheating.
That's serious. Now, the UK CAA uses something called the Quadrant system. This isn't just A, B, C, D anymore, is it?
No, and this is where it gets tricky. They have introduced new question styles to combat rote learning. One is multi-select. It will say select all the correct statements and give you 5 options. You have to tick the 3 that are right.
And if you only get 2 of the 3.
You get 0 marks. If you miss one or tick a wrong one, you get 0.
Brutal. No partial credit?
None. Then there is inline or close questions, basically fill in the blanks in a sentence. But the most dangerous one, in my opinion, is text entry.
This is where you have to type in a number yourself.
Yes. No multiple choice options to save you. No sanity check where you can see your calculated answer matches option B. You calculate a number, you type it in.
And I assume rounding and significant figures matter here too.
Hugely. You have to check the question for instructions like to 1 decimal place. If the answer is 12.5 and you type 13, you fail. If you type 12.50 and they asked for 1 decimal place, you might be okay, but you have to be so careful.
Let's talk about problem solving under pressure. You're in the exam, you're staring at a question, and your mind just goes blank. What do you do?
The subconscious is a powerful tool. If you are stuck, flag the question and move on. Don't stare at it for 10 minutes burning the clock. Often, while you are doing the next 5 questions, your background processing solves the problem. When you come back to it, the answer is suddenly obvious.
And for the math questions, sanity checks seem vital. You mentioned this before.
Always ask yourself, is this physically possible? If you calculate the takeoff distance for a jet and get 20 meters, you have made a mistake. If you calculate the speed of a Cessna and get Mach 0.8, you have made a mistake. A Cessna cannot fly at almost the speed of sound.
Yeah.
If you calculate the required fuel and get a negative number, stop. Catching these gross errors saves lives in the real world and saves exams in the exam hall.
There is also a specific rule mentioned for navigation, the 1 in 60 rule.
This is the absolute foundation of mental navigation. The rule states that if you are 60 nautical miles from a station, a 1-mile error sideways equals 1 degree of track error.
That sounds oddly specific, but useful.
It allows you to do trigonometry in your head. So if you are 60 miles out and 2 miles off track, you need a 2-degree correction. If you are 30 miles out, which is half of 60, and 2 miles off track, the error is now double, so you need a 4-degree correction. It's simple, but powerful.
Moving to our last section, physical and mental performance. We tend to think of this as a purely intellectual challenge, but the sources really emphasize the biological aspect of it.
It is a biological performance event. You are an athlete, and your brain is the muscle. You cannot perform at a high cognitive level if you are sleep deprived.
Right. I saw a source, Jet Bean Coffee, that had some interesting points on this.
They did. They note that caffeine improves reaction time and alertness, which is great, but they emphasize avoiding it after 2 p.m.
Because sleep is what consolidates memory.
Exactly. If you study all day and then sleep poorly, the memory doesn't stick. The transfer from short-term to long-term memory happens during REM sleep. Pulling an all-nighter before an exam is actually counterproductive. You might remember facts for 4 hours, but your analytical brain, the part you need for problem solving, will be sluggish.
And what about stress management? One source used the term cognitive reframing.
It's a fancy way of saying, get a grip on your perspective. It feels like life or death in the moment, but it isn't. It's an exam. If you fail, you can retake it. Reframing the anxiety from a threat to a challenge helps lower cortisol levels, which clears up your thinking.
Speaking of failure, we probably need to normalize it. The sources are pretty clear that failing an exam is common.
It is. Very, very few people pass all 13 or 14 subjects first time with 95%. It happens, but it's exceptionally rare.
And there's this concept of the exam room drop. What is that?
Yes, you should expect to score 10% to 15% lower in the real exam than you do in your practice tests at home.
Why is that?
It's the stress, the unfamiliar environment, the new question styles, the uncomfortable chair, the distraction of someone coughing next to you. It all adds up. So if you are consistently scoring 75% at home, you are actually on the verge of failing.
So what should you aim for in practice?
You need to be scoring 90 to 95% in practice to be safe for a 75% pass in the real thing. That gives you the buffer you need.
That is a really practical and crucial benchmark. Aim for 95 to get 75.
Exactly. Aim high.
So, bringing it all together,
Okay.
we have the frozen ATPL as the goal. We have a strategy of module structure, active recall, disciplined QBank usage, and taking care of your own biology.
That's the formula. Structure, technique, discipline, and well-being.
And just to clarify for the listeners, once you pass these 13 or 14 exams, you don't just jump into the captain's seat of an A380, right?
Yeah. No, not at all. You have your frozen ATPL. You then need to go fly. You need 1,500 hours total time, including 500 hours in a multi-crew environment, to eventually unfreeze the license. These exams are just the gatekeepers to let you start that long journey.
Which leads us to our final thought. I was struck by a sentiment that came up again and again in the sources. There's this tension between just passing the exam and actually being a good pilot.
There is a big one. You can game these exams, you can memorize the question bank, learn all the tricks, and scrape a pass. But the question you have to ask yourself is, do I want to be a professional exam passer, or do I want to be a professional pilot?
Because at 35,000 feet, with an engine on fire, the question bank won't help you.
Exactly. 5 years from now, when you have an engine failure over the Alps at night, nobody cares what score you got on your air law exam. They care if you understand the systems, the meteorology, and the performance limitations of your aircraft.
The exam is temporary.
The exam is temporary. The responsibility of keeping your passengers safe is permanent.
That is the perfect place to leave it. Don't just learn it to pass, learn it so you don't crash.
Precisely. That's the whole point.
Thank you for listening to this deep dive into the ATPL exams. Good luck with the study, keep the caffeine before 2 p.m., and we will see you on the next one.
Safe flying.
All right. Many thanks for listening to this free part of the ATPL Theory podcast. If you want to continue learning and access the full comprehensive guide, go to my Patreon at patreon.com/ATPLtheory or my Hero at herohero.co/ATPL. That is patreon.com/ATPLtheory or herohero.co/ATPL. Wishing you all the best